Hello and welcome to episode 648 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are coming off of a Bijan Robinson has made the world go brain bust kind of week. Yes, that's right. Bijan Robinson apparently came down with some kind of illness on Saturday night. On Sunday, he said he woke up. He was just completely out of it. He said his head was hurting really bad. He didn't know what was going on. Said he tried to go in pregame, but then Coach Arthur Smith came and said, listen, we'll be all right. Let's get you right. You're clearly not healthy. So, okay, fine. You know, the dude is sick. He's only active in case of emergency. Fine. The problem is that the Falcons are required to report this to the NFL if he is in any danger of missing the game. Falcons didn't. Local beat reporters, national reporters, nothing on Bijan. And the NFL did say they have launched an investigation into what was going on here. So when Bijan Robinson only plays 11 snaps in the game, only gets one touch, yeah, people are going to be mega tilted. And I get that. Believe me, I totally get that. I'll just say a few things. First, Arthur Smith probably did the right thing, right? You don't want to force your player to play if he's not physically able. But why give him 11 snaps? Why give him a carry with 33 seconds left, his only touch? It's just really dolty behavior. You know, maybe someone told him Bijan better get a touch late or we're going to get a massive fine from the NFL for not reporting this. Or maybe he just wanted to see if Bijan could give him anything. I'm sure he asked Bijan. Bijan said, yes, I can go out there for a few snaps. Whatever. The part of the story, though, where people lose me is when they suggest that this was all part of some massive conspiracy, you know, something really nefarious, some master plan to fuck people out of their Bijan overs tickets on sports books or at the prop parlay sites. I mean, Jesus, people, like, zoom out and think about this. These guys are making millions of dollars. The Falcons are worth billions. Arthur Smith Sr. owns fucking FedEx. The NFL is worth hundreds of billions. You think that these people are putting it all on the line to fuck you out of your $50 Bijan over ticket or your $500 parlay or even your 10K parlay? It just doesn't make any sense. I think everyone has just gone so brain bust because there's so much fake news and exaggerations and half-truths out there now. No one believes anything anymore. Everything is a conspiracy, even when it comes to spots where it makes no sense. And that's like a major problem for our society. And believe me, I'm not saying not to question things at all. We should question everything. I'm just saying as we question things, we should zoom out and think about things rationally. The Falcons and Bijan and Arthur Smith conspiring to fuck you out of your parlay is not thinking rationally. And the crazy part is it's like these people who complain about this, like the Bijan situations, it's like it never crossed their mind that they are allowed to bet the under. I'd say out of all the NFL player props that I've bet in my life, which is easily thousands, 90% of them have been unders. And a large part of that is because books used to not factor in injury risk, which is part of the whole mean median discussion I'm not going to get into now. But my point is that, yes, you're allowed to bet the under, and part of betting the under is factoring in injury risk or situations like this Bijan thing. So, yeah. Anyway, wanted to get to DFS week 7. Thought a big story was late swap. You know, we had a very rare situation during the week 7 main slate where a star player, DK Metcalf, was a legit game time decision, and his backup, effectively, a future star, Jackson Smith and Jigba, stood to benefit most. And JSN had an amazing matchup and was very cheap. You know, just like a perfect storm of late swap injury situations. Now, normally, I think the field over swaps in cash, but under swaps pretty dramatically in tournaments. In this case, though, this was such a unique case that seemingly everyone was ready and willing and able to swap to JSN, you know, at least at higher stakes. In the $333 buy-in on DraftKings, JSN got to 28% owned. I think he would have been around 8 to 10% if DK Metcalf was ruled in. In the 4K on DraftKings, Jackson Smith and Jigba was 37% owned. But you can see where at low stakes, people aren't swapping nearly enough. In the big $3.20 max on DraftKings, JSN 9% owned. In the $20 Millie Maker, only 12%. I guess my point is that when there's such an obvious injury late swap spot, we also need to be careful, not just with JSN ownership at high stakes, but also stuff around him. And so the JSN thing flowed through to other stuff in that game as people started stacking it more. Kenneth Walker was 56% in the Wildcat. Marquise Brown, who I thought people might be done with to some degree, he comes along for the ride with all the Seahawks stuff as part of that game at 26% in the Wildcat, 25% in the Millie Maker. Geno Smith was the most owned quarterback, 18% in the Wildcat. That's really high. And a lot of it had to do because stacking with JSN became so strong. So I spent a lot of time on this podcast last week talking about leveling. When it comes to late swap, again, I still think people are wildly underswapping in tournaments. But in super obvious injury and exciting replacement spots like this, people are clearly on it. In low stakes, people are not swapping, and that's a massive advantage. A couple other things from the slate I wanted to mention. I lost a lot of money in week 6 by playing D'Onta Foreman. In week 7, D'Onta Foreman was our 7th best running back value on DraftKings, but I just couldn't click him. I knew it was likely right to play D'Onta Foreman in tournaments. I knew he'd be really lightly owned. I just couldn't do it. And that's not very professional, right? I mean, last week is last week. This week is a whole new situation and a whole new puzzle. And I know that. I understand that one game of NFL football is pretty meaningless. I mean, so many people after Foreman failed against the Vikings in week 6, how could you play this slow, fat guy who doesn't catch passes? He sucks. He's on the Bears. Fast forward just 7 days, and D'Onta Foreman goes 1689-2 rushing, 331-1 receiving. It's just a great reminder about the insane amount of variance and volatility in the NFL. I really try not to make sweeping conclusions about players, and why it's just so clear to me that opportunity is the actual signal at running back, not talent. But regardless, I was just weak. I lost so much on Foreman in week 6, couldn't make my fingers click him in week 7. And when people ask, where can tools and software and projections, where can that help? If you use projections, if you looked at optimals with certain rules, if you looked at the Sims, you could have had more conviction, more data-based conviction that Foreman was right. And that's also a more repeatable process. Okay, last thing is the cash review article. So again, I'm honestly not really sure why people care where or what I play. But as I noted last week, I was mainly going to play cash on FanDuel last week and write the review article about it. Trip report from that is effectively got some really good action in terms of egregious lineups people ran against me. In terms of volume, not as much as I typically get on DraftKings, but still decent. I think on a week-to-week basis, there are more quote-unquote musts, as I call them in the review article, as I would define them on FanDuel typically versus DraftKings, which I think gives me more time to concentrate on GPP teams. And honestly, that's like a priority for me. I've only been doing 2 to 3 GPP teams a week so far this season. Ideally would love to get closer to 5 to 8 teams that I feel good about. Obviously that's not practical if I'm debating all kinds of cash decisions. So all in all, I'll likely play FanDuel cash again this week and take it from there. I will say it's a bit weird, I got a fistful of like really mean and hateful messages about not writing the article on DK Cash last week, which is really confusing to me. Like, why do people care where I play? Nothing changed about our content or anything like that. I really didn't think where I play is something to get angry about, but apparently it is. Who knew? Oh, last housekeeping thing. Had a few questions about where the YouTube video of this show is. Yes, we have removed the solo pod videos from the main ETR YouTube channel. You're not going to believe this, but sex jokes are messing with the channel's ability to reach a wider audience. So if you want to see the video version of this very solo pod now, go to YouTube and search Life with Levitan. I'm sure dozens of you are racing your computers right now. Again, Life with Levitan on YouTube. All right. Want to get to listener questions before I do. Important. The NBA, it starts tonight. I'm obviously biased, but I think it's nearly impossible to play NBA DFS without the product that Dink, Gallagher, Dank, Claff, Mark, Gary, the entire NBA team we have puts out, because it's so so hard to do projections for NBA well. It takes an entire team working around the clock to be ready for each slate. So if you're playing NBA DFS, check out that product. It's on the subscribe page. There are weekly and monthly options available. If you have if you plan to bet props, we are covering that also. Please, though, before you sign up for props, read the FAQ first. You can find that in the props tab or in the NBA tab. All right, enough is enough. Let's get to everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, appreciate all the questions from everyone. Going to do 5 of them today. Question 1 from John Dawson says, is it reasonable for my wife to get upset when I don't wash my hands after getting up in the middle of the night to urinate, or am I justified in thinking it's unnecessary? Well, John, let me direct your attention to one of the great orators of our generation, Rick Ross, featuring Gucci Mane in the memorable ballad, MC Hammer. The key line that we need here, John, is from the chorus. It goes, I'm riding dirty, my dick clean. And that line speaks to me because, as John notes here, my dick, it is indeed clean, at least on a relative basis. I mean, it's way cleaner than my hands, right? I always thought that we should actually be pre-washing our hands before urinating. You know, it's touching my precious cock with my disgusting hands that is the actual problem, not the inverse. So yes, John, I am on your side here. Your wife sounds like a raging anti-cockite. If you had rubbed your nose, rubbed some wax from your ear, scratched your armpit, the expectation would not be for you to wash your hands. Even maybe it should be. And I have no doubt, John, that your cock is much cleaner than your nose or your earwax, your armpit or whatever. Final thing I'd say here, I'd encourage everyone to find a way to teach yourself to urinate standing up without using your hands at all, like hands behind your back. It's just a time saver, eliminates the entire discussion we just had. And when you're in a public place, I can almost guarantee that the faucets, the paper towel dispenser, God forbid, that hand dryer blow thing that just blows fecal matter everywhere, I guarantee those things are far dirtier and more bacteria laden than anything else on this earth. So if you can go hands-free and you don't have to wash your hands afterwards, you're good. You know, can sleep at night knowing you didn't need to wash after a mere urination. Question 2 from FPL Hardman says, in what situation do you go with your gut over just stats? Is there a particular player / team that you always sway towards? Yeah, I got a bunch of questions similar to this effect. You know, it's effectively asking when to IKB, when to I know better, the projections. First of all, FPL Hardman, if I knew this, if I was able to accurately IKB at a really high rate, I wouldn't be doing fantasy football videos for my Honda Pilot, right? I'd be sailing around the world on my yacht, surrounded by golden retrievers and models and female Russian tennis players, okay? Because as I said a couple weeks ago, when I was talking about the sim stuff, that is really where the biggest edges are. The biggest edges are not any tools or software. The biggest edge you can find in any sports market is effectively disagreeing with the consensus, disagreeing with the market, and being right. So we think we do that on some basis, right? We have a big influence on the market with our projections, but we think we do that on some basis. To think about how you could IKB our projections, I think it's worth backing out and thinking about how you could do that. To me, there's 2 things. First, understand range of outcomes and fragility in the projections better than the field. So what I mean is that 2 players can have a base projection of 10 points, the exact same. But that is not the same. There are some situations that we are very sure on. You know, we have a big sample on the player. We have a huge sample on the coaching tendencies. The projection is rock solid. Other times, like say, how much will Jeff Wilson play on Sunday night against the Eagles? We're just making educated guesses. So understanding the difference between those 2 spots, maybe at the same projection, that's a thing. Along those lines, those same two players with a base of 10 could have a way wider range of outcomes. Christian Watson with a base of 10 is far different than, say, Deontay Johnson with a base of a 10-point projection. Watson can airball or get 40. Deontay is way more likely to be within a tight range of the projection. And we try to show that in both floor and ceiling, the sim-based floor and ceiling projections that we show on the projection page. But I suspect a lot of people don't look at that. The second thing that you could do if trying to IKB projections is you could ask yourself, do I know something? Do I have a take that is not in the projection? And, things like the weather or Joe Burrow's hurt or some like big offensive line injuries, that stuff is already in the projections. We do not want to be double counting. But let's say, let me give an example. Let's say before the season, you thought last year was a bit fluky or a big time fluke that AJ Brown and Devonte Smith effectively had the same target share. You thought, well, that was, not right. AJ Brown is an alpha. He crushes Devonte Smith in the PSM. You had some data or tape take that we didn't incorporate or whatever. And we kind of agreed to some degree, right? We had AJ Brown around 10th overall in our season-long rankings, if I recall right, and Devonte Smith closer to 25th or 26th overall. But if you thought what happened so far would actually happen, AJ Brown 30% of the targets, Devonte 20%, well, that's a printing press for you, right? It's just very, very hard to do that and be right because we have a huge team of people who can just look at this stuff and think about it 24/7, 365. And that's not to say that we don't miss stuff and we can't make mistakes, but it's just harder than it seems to IKB and be right. It's easy to IKB. Anyone can IKB. I try to fucking do it all the time. Just hard to do the be right part. But yeah, I definitely think it's, worth thinking through. Some spots that you know better than the projections on, and you're right, is going to be the best way to get paid off. Question 3 from Hot Dog DFS. He says, you have the deathbed theorem. I always worry about the funeral theory. When I think back at the end of my life, did I do enough to warrant people to drop everything in their lives and attend my funeral? Larger the attendance, bigger the impact I had on others. What are your thoughts? Yeah, Hot Dog DFS. I'm not sure I really agree there. I mean, I guess my point is I'm not sure that the number of people, the raw volume of people at your funeral really means too much. I know a ton of people who are super social, friends with everyone, life of the party. That's cool. There'll be hundreds of people at the funeral. How many actual close, important relationships did that person have? I don't know. I think having some smaller number of people who you've really impacted or care about you, that's at least as good as the other side, if not better. Honestly, though, Hot Dog DFS, like the whole idea around funerals actually rubs me the wrong way. Like, if people really like me enough, as you said, to drop everything and attend my funeral, I'd love to hear about that before I die. If you're going to give a speech at my funeral, I'd love to hear that speech before I'm GG, And I know that's hard. I don't do a good job of it either, but I'm pretty confident I'm not going to hear it, what you say at my funeral. Slightly related, I always wonder why people wait until they die to give money to relatives or kids or charity or whatever. Like, if you know you're going to leave a lot of money behind, why not give it to your kids or whoever you want to before you die so you can see them enjoy it, right? Like, makes no sense. It doesn't really apply to me, as my kids know they aren't getting any goddamn handouts. I'll burn my money before any free lunches are before any free lunches are given out, but still. Question 4 from Joe. He says, is it finally time to eliminate the tight end position in DFS and season long once and for all? Give the people what they want. Yeah, Joe, tough question. I know some season long leagues have gone to an extra flex spot instead of tight end. I think DraftKings rolled out a super flex DraftKings DFS game. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm not sure if that has tight end. So I think some people are doing it, the eliminating tight end thing, I think. But as much as I bitch about tight end, I do think there's significant strategy around it. And I think that can generate some edge for us. So even though I hate it, if I had a vote, I'd probably just vote to keep tight end. Some edges I think that there are in season long. Any leagues that are 10 teams or smaller, just so huge to get a Kelsey or Andrews or Hawkinson. in those small leagues, everyone's going to be so loaded at running back and wide receiver. Best place to separate is at quarterback and tight end, especially tight end. Best ball, I'm not sure it will end up right, but I really thought this year that taking 3 tight ends in the final 5 rounds or so of a best ball draft was right, and that's assuming you didn't get a Kelsey or Andrews team. After that, everybody is just so touchdown dependent. And in best ball, just trying to find a touchdown out of your 3 late guys, I thought was a clear edge. In DFS, I mean, obviously there's been times it's blown up in my face, but basically spending as little amount of your salary cap as possible on tight end in cash on DraftKings as a strategy, I think that's been very profitable for me net. So yeah, like it's not fun to try to squeeze 8 points out of Luke Musgrave or David Njoku. I get that, but we're playing a strategy game and eliminating tight end will reduce some of that. All right, question 5, last question we're going to do today comes from Brian Anderson. Says, when is ETR going to get a dark mode option for the website? Brian, buddy, our goal is to keep the website alive and functioning. This dark mode Gen Z nonsense is on the back burner. Actually, it's not even on the back burner. It's literally out of the kitchen. It's so far down on the priority list. And yeah, look, I know that we aren't tech lords. I know that the site isn't the flashiest and loading the initial homepage can be slow at times, but we've had choices over and over and over again. Should we spend our time and money on making the site better aesthetically, functionally, or should we spend that time/money on doing everything in our power to make sure our projections, content, takes are the best in market? And to us, it's just a no-brainer, right? Like cosmetic shit just isn't what matters to us. So it's enough already with these dark mode takes. Every day the site doesn't crash is a great day in my book. I'm sorry, Brian, and everyone else who's asked. Can't worry about dark mode right now. All right, that is going to do it for this week's solo pod. I appreciate everyone who tuned in. Be sure you're subscribed anywhere podcasts are indeed found. Stay tuned to this pod feed as it will get crowded over the next 24, 48 hours. Be covering waivers, team by team pod with Silva, rest of season top 150 show, and maybe more coming real soon. For producer Luke, for the most beautiful beast in the world, Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.